Welcome to the first episode of the Esoteric Survivalist, a short commentary on approaches and tips of an esoteric nature in order that can help us make it through the day, so to speak, in a rough world. Before I go on, I know it's important to be able to clarify what I mean by esoteric. And I'm using the word esoteric because if I use the word occult or magic or arcane or some crazy cryptic word that proliferates out of context most of the time, there might be misunderstandings. So esoteric has a better credibility, you might say, but it's still the same thing. It's all about what goes on inside of us. And I'm not just speaking in our own heads. That's one part of it, but also in the body as sensation, because you can even say your mind is a bunch of electrochemical influences or patterns, etc. So anything that happens in the body is also partly mental. And the body-mind is a whole thing. So it's better to look at this. I'm going to use terminology that may sound new agey, but it still describes the situation, because what we want to do as these episodes go along is to condense certain truths that people mostly have used in folk medicine or folk magic or even folk mysticism of sorts, which is where religions came from. All of this has given us, as humanity, a bunch of traditions out of which we can extract a certain condensed thing that we can use. Now, this is normally done in a haphazard mechanical manner. It's not me who claims to be the first one doing it or that it's anything special. You have a giant book, you read through it, you understand it, you can apply it, and then you don't want to express it verbatim to somebody else and tell them, oh, it's your problem now. You want to be able to say, okay, I thought about all of these things, and perhaps we can express these and adapt these to our needs this way as well as that way. Being creative, in other words. Being esoterically creative means to step off of the traditional diagrams of how things should be and understanding the principles, they can be applied with variations. It's the same thing as being literary creative. You know syntax, you know grammar, but to actually craft a story, even if you know all the elements of the story, it isn't that easy. And it isn't believable for everybody. But some people have a knack for it, or they can practice, or through exposure of information, but it's still a human brain and a human mind, or rather a human body-mind. So in all of this, we need to understand where the term survivalist is coming from. It sounds pretty dire. And in a way it is. If you take out the physical parts of the world, you have a certain information matrix, you might say. You have everything that goes on in our thoughts, our feelings, how we relate these to other people, anywhere we can, and the impressions we get as feedback. All of these create a certain field of experience for every individual human being. And this field of experience is the reality of that human being, the state of that field, like I said, just as the words say, field of experience. We don't need to mystify it yet. So this medium of experience that people have within themselves, where they register it, regardless if they say, oh, that's objective or not, it's still within you. If you don't register it in your senses and your emotions and your interpretations, all of these things, it's not real for you. Your consciousness needs to be there. And to the extent that we're connected, as the mystics say, perhaps some consciousness needs to be there, even if it comes innately from within the sphere itself. But where this is coming from is that the internal reality is at stake in the sense of mental destabilization, spiritual destabilization, destabilization of identity, destabilization of society, of one's relations, whatever the reasons. When you live in an environment like that, it is like physically being in the wilderness, where your amenities and your conveniences may not be present, but you still can survive if you are resourceful. In other words, your own resourcefulness in interaction with the environment as is can actually get you through. Now, what happens after that? Well, If you're that resourceful, then you can figure out a way to the next step. That is usually why we see a lot of introductory esoteric material and not much not much advanced, or nobody dares really claim advanced. It's all secret and all of this and rituals. But actually, how many people have gotten their hands on advanced information, allegedly, and have disseminated it into the world? Mostly you're going to see the basics repeated and embellished in variations on the theme. And the basics, we'll discuss those. This is an existential point of view. It's a paradigm, as I call it. And paradigms are important because they structure the mind, they structure perception, and they structure consciousness. So we're coming from a paradigm that accepts metaphysical as well as physical reality. And metaphysical doesn't mean unreal, or, well, it does mean immaterial, but immaterial doesn't mean insubstantial. It affects you. Your thoughts are immaterial, they affect you. Of course, they have a material reflection. But really, if you're a hardcore materialist, then none of this will make sense. This is for those people who have an intuition that works and that lets them know that there's more than meets the eye. That the term, which is an esoteric term, the unseen, where we have occultism, it isn't really because they kept it secret. The reason they use the word, let's say the advanced meaning of the word, is in that it is about the unseen, the occulted, what you can't normally experience within the spectrum of your conditioned awareness. And awareness is conditioned. That's why we can be programmed, because we're already programmed. You're building one program on top of other programs. That's easy. If you eliminate all the programs or establish a substratum that is its own thing and cannot be programmed. It makes choices, but those choices don't come and dominate. Programs are basically parasitic. It is not the patterning of a program or a mental formation or an emotional pattern. These patterns are like waves. And if they're coherent, they're healthy to interact with always. You do have geometries that are disproportionate and that kind of pull us back. But as long as there's a coherence about them and a connection to essence, that they're not just raw wave that's disconnected from the subjective depth of being, so to speak. If they're living, they can interact with you, even if they seem off. So it's not about mechanical symmetry or getting the rules right or doing things the right way, even though this terminology will be used. In fact, in order to be able to get through, you need to find your natural connection to what these allegorical truths are. Because the allegories, the symbolism, the mythologies, all of these things are there to come into the psyche and unlock the real connections of where the body understands it. The body-mind as a unity understands it in the right metabolic context. Then it becomes part of your physical being. And then it's just a natural expression once it becomes grounded, ingrained. And to do that, there's some things to overcome. So we will come into the issue of karma, or cause and effect, and how karma does not always mean justice. So the principles we will describe, I don't feel comfortable just diving into them. I'd like to give a little background, because just as we are going to be as far away from dogmas as possible, we cannot avoid archetypes. We cannot avoid symbols, like the symbol of the nuclear family, the father-mother divinity, or the polarities through which a child is created, etc., etc. These plus minus or yin-yang polarities are important. They not only structure our physical experience, because they do resemble what goes on in matter, they structure our internalized experience, our transmental experience beyond the mind, into realms where the mind is a macrocosmic reality. That's something we don't find easy to believe in, because there's no sensory proof of it, but within our imagination and circumstantially, anything you imagine that connects to other minds creates a world. So if, for example, there is a artificial reality in some game, a gaming world, for example, that's so real, we all download ourselves into it and all of that. It is not the game that's gonna be the reality. It is the presence of you and other people that are gonna be harnessed to define a reality and sustain it. Without you, it's just a bunch of form. so it won't have any meaning. And this is figuratively, but is also esoterically true. The importance of your choice as an individual is not emphasized enough in the literature, and when it is, it's in a New Agey way, or else it's taken into a demonic context. And when I say demonic with an E, I mean malignant consciousness, malevolent consciousness as an archetype. So we'll get more into that, but these are tidbits and snippets, and I'd like to see, well, to tell you the truth, it's not good to give out such information in so condensed a form that it goes completely over your head. So I believe that at this point we can call it a day for now. Till next time, and we shall continue trying to understand where the survivalist context is coming from here. So for now, Magus out.